And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
Attention, roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern time. And of course, it's Wednesday, middle of the week. Finest Unfiltered. Of course, content still rocking from New York City, NYPD and politics. So let's talk about Eric Adams and the Detectives Endowment Association president and their relationship, which is Scott Munro. John, let's just jump right into it. And I think this is quite interesting, and this wraps everything up full circle when we talk about nepotism, cronyism, the tiered system in the NYPD, which applies to disciplinary matrix. And what we realized and learned and uncovered is that not only is it the disciplinary matrix, but it also applies to promotions, amenities, and inside tangibles from the NYPD. Let's go, brother.
Yeah, so I think, we could go back before even Scott Munro was the president of the Detectives Endowment Association when he was getting ready to take over. He did a lot of media appearances. He was very friendly about the Adams administration. He was not a fan of the de Blasio administration. We know that his son, he believed, was being targeted by then Chief Joe Resnick, who was Deputy Commissioner of Internal Affairs, Joe Resnick, former NYPD chief. He believed that his son was being targeted in an investigation, that they had reopened up an allegation where his son was arrested later on after the fact, after an incident at a volunteer firehouse out in Long Island, or an incident between him and another volunteer fireman. So he believed that the Internal Affairs Bureau of the NYPD was going to look a lot different under Eric Adams. He believed that policing was going to look a lot better under Eric Adams, and Eric Adams was a friend and a supporter of the police. And I think a lot of the things he said leading up to that were true. I think when you look at what happened to his son, it did look like IB went after him to get back at his father. It 100% did. So like going ahead, I think Eric Adams was by far the most damaging mayor we've ever had to the New York City Police Department. His appointments we've had 4 NYPD police commissioners. We've had countless corruption scandals. All of them have been unanswered. There's still a dark cloud looming over the NYPD. And we have, on this show, we have a detective right now sitting with us, Marlon Bethel, who was terminated by Eric Adams without given due process, without being charged with anything, without a department trial. And for basically this entire term since Scott has taken over, all he's saying is how much of a friend Eric Adams is, how he could pick up the phone and Eric will answer at any time. And and the thing is, like, we all sat here and we're like, all right, well, that's great. Then have him reinstate and compensate Marlon Bethel. Like, you have 2 guys that are detectives that were fired under the Eric Adams administration without any reason. Scott, we're not saying that you should end the entire mandate and you should get lieutenants and cops, and sergeants and inspectors and captains, all those people back. But you're the president of the Detectives Endowment Association. The mayor did wrong. The city of New York did wrong. He could, with a stroke of a pen, reinstate and compensate Marlon Bethel right now. You could have picked up the phone to do that, but what it looked like, it was more of we could pick up the phone anytime we want to get the things that I need and the things that I want. And it appears to me that the things you want and things that you need are for your own personal gain. It has nothing to do with your members. It has nothing to do with bettering the New York City Police Department or bettering the work environment or quality of life for working detectives or getting more detectives in your rank. So, I mean, that's what it looks like. And to be fair, just so everyone knows, Eric invited Scott on and he said that he didn't want to come on. So he had every right to come on here, speak to the men and women, the rank and file of the NYPD, who are, especially the Detectives Endowment Association, who are highly upset over him giving Eric Adams a lifetime or whatever, some type of achievement award at the last holiday meeting that they had in Cipriani's. So, Marlon, what's up, brother?
Yo. Morning, guys. Strange coming on Wednesday. It's very different. I have a lot of questions about what happened, but I think in doing a little late night digging, I think I know the answer to it. And I'm not happy about it, but you know, the days of me getting angry at like the DEA and Scott, I'm not really angry because I've come to expect very little from them, and I think what we're gonna discuss is just you know, it's just what they do. You know, they're about self-interest, and they're not about actually doing the work they're paid for by their bosses, really, which are you guys, the guys on the job, the detectives, and you know the other cops who are, you know, members of their respective unions. They're not doing the job they paid for you, and I'm gonna reiterate that, you know, when the time comes for you to really need the union, they're never there. So I'm not even sure why you guys are still paying for them. But yeah, there's a lot about this, and I'm ready to get down and talk about it.
Well, I have to be honest. The part that I'm perturbed by is the fact that people will overlook the negative things, the dark cloud, because they see the benefit for them, and I think it's nearsighted. And John and I spoke about this yesterday. I said, you know, I remember there was a time when I was working in the Lower East Side. I was a crime sergeant there, and probably the most orchestrated drug dealer I've ever seen in my entire career in the Lower East Side was so effective because there was this one particular drug dealer that was running a huge operation, making a lot of money, but he had the community on his side, and it was smart. Quite often on the weekends, he would have the ice cream trucks come over, and he would give all the kids in the neighborhood ice cream. He would even pay for trips and send the kids to Great Adventure for the weekend. So the whole community was like on his side. At the same time, selling drugs to the same community that was happy with him. And so that, I think, it's almost like the same thing that, you know, I've talked to Scott, and I've had great conversations with him. And Scott will tell me, oh, you know, Eric is good to us. And I say, well, that is the problem. You're saying he's good to you, but what about all these other issues, this cloud of corruption, all these issues going on affecting really the general population, the rank and file, right? If there's certain amenities that you're getting, maybe that's because that's to keep you quiet, just as the drug dealer was giving kids ice cream and sending families to Great Adventure because they stayed quiet, because they got a little benefit. They got, you know, and I think it's the same thing. Guys are getting benefits, and they're staying quiet about everything else going on. Now, when it comes to Scott Munro's son, I don't know him personally, but I can tell you this. If he did an ounce of police work, he deserves grade more than half of these people that are getting grade just for driving someone, like, for instance, Ingrid Sanders or several other detectives. However, the timing's impeccable. And we have to be honest. We cannot say that it's coincidence that he happens to get promoted when Eric Adams is out the door at the same time that Scott Munro is putting his hand out and gifts and gratitude towards Eric Adams publicly. So while his son may be deserving of it, I don't know him. The timing's impeccable, and the reason he got it, again, is connected to this tiered system. And that tiered system gives people full access to their needs, amenities, and benefits. And it also attributes to what I say often, is that people are quiet and they allow things to continue within the police department. And people are wronged because they paved the way for their offspring. And Scott is doing the same thing, making sure that the path is smooth for his son. Shay made sure his path was smooth for his son. And we see it time and time again. And it is a family business. The NYPD, in many ways, is a family business. And that's why people keep their mouth shut. I have to take care of my son. I have to take care of my wife. I have to take care of this person. And so for that reason, I have to stay quiet and stay shut.
Yeah. So, you know, look, there's a lot of things. One, Scott's a father, so I'll never knock a father for taking care of his son, right? I'll never do that. Like you that's that job comes before any other job, right? But when you talk about fairness, when you talk about nepotism, I don't think that Scott Munro doesn't deserve second grade his son. So let's just get that out there. I think that he could actually deserve. Now, I don't know what he's done. I don't know what he's doing currently. I know there's a lot of banter. Oh, he's the admin guy in this unit. He flipped from this unit to that. I don't know any of that to be true. I don't know Scott personally. I interacted with him a few times online. But, I mean, just looking at the kid's record, he's got over 200 collars. He's in a federal task force. I mean, who should get grade? I mean, I think he should get grade over somebody that's in the Support Services Bureau, in IAB, in a borough somewhere, an admin person somewhere else. I mean, because are we going to pretend that there's not admin people and community affairs people that don't get second and first grade? I think Scott is well deserving of second grade. So, for everyone that's upset, the guys that are in other task force, the guys that are out there making collars that have hundreds of collars or maybe even 1,000 collars, and you still haven't got grade, I understand that you have every reason to be upset. But it's not Scott you should be mad at, and it's not even Scott Munro, the president, you should be mad at. You should be mad at Eric Adams, because the amount of nepotism, the amount of people that have gotten grade, first grade, second grade, with under 20 collars I think it's unprecedented in the Eric Adams administration. I think it's completely unprecedented. Here's the problem, though, with this. And here's the problem with this whole promotion, and why it's a problem, and why this is coming up, and why all the members in the DEA are upset. It's because everyone saw the relationship between Scott Munro Sr. and Eric Adams. And everyone said, oh, Scott didn't get promoted yet? I bet before Eric Adams gets out, little Scott's going to get promoted. Scott Jr. is going to get promoted, right? And guess what? The last promotion ceremony of Eric Adams, guess who gets promoted? So it's the appearance of it that upsets everybody. You bring up Eric Adams, you have a detective sing My Way. The guy was the worst mayor in the NYPD. More NYPD cops, more NYPD detectives. Let's leave the cops part out. More NYPD detectives have retired or retired early under Eric Adams than any other mayor in New York City history. It's not outside factors that's the case. So there have been more corruption scandals. And not only did you endorse the guy, now you given him an achievement award. You have a cop singing My Way to him, when we all know that anybody with integrity would say that there's no way Eric Adams shouldn't be in jail right now. There's no way he shouldn't at least had to face his trial. I mean, the amount of money, we're talking billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. And then what he did to the job, where now you could just be fired without due process. You don't need an allegation, because there was never an allegation made against Marlon Bethel. Marlon Bethel didn't violate the patrol guide. He didn't do anything. The precedent is set that you could be fired just to be fired. And Scott Munro, who's supposed to be pushing back at that, has a detective singing My Way on the stage to Eric Adams while he's giving him a Lifetime Achievement Award. And then guess what happens? Scott Jr. gets promoted. The optics of it, I understand why detectives are mad. I totally understand. And the optics of it are horrific. They're horrendous. I mean, I honestly think, like, political moves, when we talk about how people are going to talk and the banter, I mean, to me, clear as day, there was some deal made. That's how I see it. I don't know that there was, but that's what it looks like to me. I mean, I got to be honest about it. It looks like this was brought up. Again, do I think that he's deserving of the promotion? Yeah, I would say he's more deserving than the majority of people I've seen make second, first grade, SDS, LSA, deputy inspector, chief. He's definitely more deserving than those people. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't a deal made behind the scenes to circumvent the entire Adams administration and the entire way people actually get discretionary promotions in the NYPD. Now, I don't think that he paid money to get promoted, which was alleged to be happening under Eric Adams. And it certainly appeared like that was happening too. But, it looked like, the relationship was used for personal gain. Give you a Lifetime Achievement Award. You promote my son. Quid pro quo. Ever hear of that? Yeah, I heard of it.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you, John. Those there has been a lot of unprecedented promotions under Eric Adams of guys with less than 20, and some with less than 10, to be honest. Yeah. Yeah,
Well, I
which
mean,
is
Eric's got
absurd.
less than 10,
Yeah.
so Eric Adams is. I think I think what do we have him at? Nine arrests, 9 or 7? I don't remember.
It's definitely single digits.
I would love, and still Sheld hasn't commented on police officer Eric Adams. We don't know what he thinks about that.
Yeah.
Well, what happens is when you're drinking, you don't see single digits. You start to see double.
Yeah. So that and by the way, I think arrests don't necessarily mean you're a good cop, or but you're doing a disservice to both the job and to those cops by promoting them with less than 10 years, with less than 10 collars. They need to learn the job, and they need to they can't learn the job unless you get out there and you grind. And listen, I will disagree with you on one thing, John. That now, Scott, you're right about this looks inappropriate. Scott getting second grade, but I have a hard time believing that he's deserving of it. Okay, and I already see that we have someone in this chat who appears to be the second person in this chat, but is already defending it. And I'm gonna say, sure, I don't know Scott personally, so he may be a great guy, but it's not about that. The point is that Scott came on in 2013, and he's already been through. If you look at the amount of units this guy's been through, a lot of high profile units with what are we on? Let's see, 20. This will be 14 years now. That's insane. How are you in DTF with 14 years on? Okay, you're in DTF. You've been through auto crime. You've been through Central Robbery Division. I'm saying he could be a great cop, but he's already seemed to be in units that you need that rocket fuel to have gotten into. And he may be a great cop, but to have second grade with that little time on is absolutely insane when you consider all the detectives who've been grinding for multiple decades, and they're still third graders right now. Okay, so you can be a great detective, but you got to put your time in, kid. You got to put your time in, and you got to put your work in, and get in line. Okay, and the fact that he's been in so many units so quickly tells me that he's in that upper tier of the NYPD, that Nepo baby tier. I'm sorry, but it is what it is, and that tier, as we said before, gets they have everything is on a different level to them than the rest of the serfs on the bottom.
So to me, there's several flashpoints here, right? So for one, John, while I agree as a father, and I'm a father, you're a father, we're all fathers here. We take care of our kids. Absolutely. We take care of our kids, but actually to what point? Will I defend my family to there's no tomorrow? Absolutely. And so should every father. But it is exactly what I have been saying for the longest time, over 3 years since we've been doing this network together. Our friends and listeners know that I often say that where is that old white man to stand up and say what's going on, the atrocities of the NYPD, the discrimination, and no one speaks up because of this pathway I've been speaking about. And this pathway is exactly part of this. And that is people paving the way for their offspring, right? This job is like one big favor. I do a favor for you, you do a favor for me. And that's why people keep their mouths shut. That's why favors are so powerful in the NYPD. Favors are leverage. And that's my message. If you're on the job right now and people are giving you favors, you have to ask yourself at what cost. Because when you retire and you actually want to have loose lips and freedom of speech like we do on this network, you have to have removed yourself from these favors or not have favors and do it on your own completely by merit. Because that will shut your mouth up because you won't have that leverage to speak out because people will have leverage on you. Dermot Shea was quiet. He knows about the atrocities of the job. He was supposedly a cop's cop. And his son went into the detective squad with 18 months on the job. Let's talk about paving the pathway. So the problem is the standard now is so low when it comes to discretionary promotions. And the standard is the tiers that we've been talking about with the NYPD. So yes, if you look at someone that has 18 months on the job and got into the detective squad, sure, Scott Munro deserves it if we make that comparison. But the problem is you have to understand where that comparison comes from, and the metric is about this tiered system. They're in that tier 2 section, of Nepo babies that have the right relationships, that have the right access. Because if you're tier 3 general population, and if you were Scott Munro, you would never have the pathway to be in such illustrious units to get you to that point where you would get into a position to be looked at to get promoted. There's plenty of guys with 300-400 collars that did anti-crime for so many years in the detective squad, banging around in different squads and never got promoted and still can't get grade. You got guys right now retiring. They're at their 20th year and they can't even get grade. They're not even trying to sell them grade to keep them on the job. So there's no doubt about it. There's no coincidence here. Scott Munro, while he may be deserving of it in comparison to others because the standards are not so low when it comes to discretionary promotions, the timing is impeccable. And there's no doubt about it that Eric Adams took care of Scott and Scott took care of Eric. And that's what we're talking about here, the relationship. Is the relationship worth overshadowing what's going on? Does Scott, and I ask you, Scott, do you realize how much manpower have you lost in your union? That's because of Eric Adams, the same person. So are we protecting the union or are we protecting ourselves and our family? Because the reality is the manpower is so low, the dues have to be raised right now because of Eric Adams. Eric Adams is responsible for these issues. And that's why I say I refer back to that drug dealer who gave out ice cream and Great Adventure. And people like, oh, they're getting favors. They're not going to say a word. And yet selling drugs to the same people. So I while he's deserving of it, there's a lot of other people deserving of it. The standards and the metrics are so low. There is a tiered system in the NYPD. There's no doubt about it. I don't think anyone can argue it. There is a tiered system. It applies to discipline. It applies to promotions. It applies to access. It applies to transfers. It is the job. The job is a tiered system.
Yeah, but again, my point is not about, and I agree with you totally. When you look at the units, I mean, how do you fly across all those units without daddy making a phone call for you? It's impossible. Like I said, I don't care if you are the best cop in the world. No one's going to know that at 2-3 years on. Nobody's even going to know that when you have 5 years on. You don't even really develop your legs into like your 5th year. And if you're going from your 5th year into the squad and then to the robbery squad and then to the major case squad and then to a federal task force, sorry, somebody's pushing you along that way. And that's what it is. And it just happens to be, the NYPD royalty that happens to all the time. So I totally agree with you when we're talking about transfers, right? And but again, like I said, am I going to sit here and knock him because he got 2nd grade when I seen people with no arrests or nobody even likes on the job? And people are like, how the hell is that? That person doesn't do anything. They can't even change a spool of paper and they're a 1st grade detective. They can't even change the printer paper and they're a 1st grade detective. So that's my point. But my other point is that, again, Scott caused all this because if Scott Jr. would have got promoted 6 months ago, it really wouldn't have been an issue. Wouldn't have been an issue. Nobody would have brought it up. Nobody would have been mad. I wouldn't have got a million messages. Wouldn't have been a big deal. I mean, people would have said shit, but not like they're saying it now. You know what I mean? Because I think overall, it's so obvious. Like, you made it so obvious what that was. And to be fair, I mean, this is what happens with all of the Chiefs kids. This is what it is, a chief or a high up union rep. I mean, look, we're not sitting here saying Scott Munro is the first guy to ever do this. We're not saying that at all. We're saying this is the system that exists in the NYPD. This is what's protected. This is what happens. I mean, look at Essex kid. Look, I know everybody likes Essex. 145 collars. He's in the major case squad. 3rd grade detective. How are you getting to the major case squad with 145? I'm sorry, 144, whatever it is. How are you getting that? I mean, like, I don't know. When you look at that, it raises everybody's eyebrows, and it makes all the guys that have been working for years and years and years, 20-year guys with 3rd grade detectives with 800, 900 arrests, they're pissed. I mean, look at this kid's track record. He starts in 2014. He goes to the 105 squad, then he goes to the Queens robbery squad, then he goes to the organized crime division, then he goes to the major case squad, all in 10 years. I mean, so I don't blame anybody for being mad about it. I totally get it. And I totally get why everyone's mad about Munro, but this is what happens. This is Shea's kid. This is Essig's kid. This is Kemper's kid, right? They're going directly into these high-paced units where you would need a lot of experience and you would need to have really proved yourself. And the only thing they really got is what their father did or who their father was. And so I understand that, like, this is a form of nepotism, and I understand why people are mad about it. Me personally, I think what's worse is that you latched on to the most corrupt NYPD administration there ever was. I think the fact that you ran out, formed this union coalition where you wanted to be like the head of all of the uniformed services union, and you come out to endorse Eric Adams after you lost thousands and thousands of good, experienced, moral cops. And they were demonized by this administration. People like myself, people like Eric Dim, people like Sal, people like Marlon. And there's thousands of us. It's not just us. When you run out to endorse this guy to be the mayor in the city of New York, when he doesn't even have a shot and you know it, and we've had 4 police commissioners, and there's still just a cloud over the NYPD. I mean, you're out of your mind. And going into his 2021 campaign, where he said that he was his job was, what he was going to do was lower the overall headcount of the NYPD because he wanted to reduce our budget to give that money, to take $600 million to $1 billion, to take that money and to give it to services like dyslexia screening, which is the basis of the defund the police movement. And now we have police unions jumping on board with a defund the police politician named Eric Adams, a guy who wanted to lower the overall headcount of the NYPD and successfully did it by illegally violating all our contracts and violating the law. And now we have union heads giving him an achievement award. For what, Scott? What actually did he do? And everyone's like, oh, he gave us a contract, bro. Let me tell you something. Knock, knock, knock. I don't know if you guys are there. Knock, 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 knock. I don't know if you're there. You are required to get contracts every few years. The city is required by law to negotiate with you. Eric Adams did not give you a contract. Eric Adams settled the contract that you rightfully deserved. Let's get that out there. I'm sick of hearing we got contracts on it. You didn't get nothing. You got what you should have got. And guess what? Is he helping you on his way out the door? No, he's not, right? No, he's not, because he doesn't give a shit about you. What is he doing? He's taking care of all his friends on the way out, and he's pretending he's the anti-Semitism, the great fighter against anti-Semitism. Why? Because he's grifting, looking for a job, looking for something. Meanwhile, anti-Semitism rose in New York City over 100% since he's been the mayor. So what did he accomplish? Violent crimes up. What was the accomplishment of Eric Adams? There's none. He's a friend. And he's a phone call. Oh, I could call Eric Adams anytime I want. Congratulations. You got nothing done for your members by doing that. You did self-serving things. That's why people are pissed, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I think it's actually worse, John. I think it's not just Junior's rocket fuel advancements. I think that there's the relationship between Scott Sr. and Eric Adams is deeper, because I think Eric Adams basically saved Junior's career. Now we haven't really discussed this here, but keep in mind, back in 2018, there was a fight between Scott Jr. and a fellow firefighter in Hop Park. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but it's it's out in Long Island.
Where all the union heads live. Wow, it's weird.
Oh yeah. So there's a fight between him and another firefighter, and apparently there's a follow-up altercation between maybe friends of that firefighter and Scott himself. And Scott was eventually got his detective shield stripped from him, and even though he was kicked back down a police officer, he had a nice cushy gig in Queens South in the borough, collating paperwork for the chief over there. I think he also did some time in fleet services too. So pretty good. That's a pretty nice cushy gig for getting losing your shield, right? And going back down to the rank of PO instead of being booted into back to patrol or something in the Bronx or somewhere where most guys probably would. Most guys would probably get some sort of highway therapy, right? But let's go back to the fight, right? Now, what's curious about this is this fight happened in Hauppauge Volunteer Fire Department, and basically the Munros are like the royalty of that firehouse, because I think it's their grandfather that was one of the founders of the fire department, and they have a lot. They've had an uncle there, I think multiple family members in there, and Scott Senior himself was on the fire board, or he was one of the commissioners for I think upwards of 25 years. So they're basically royalty in that department. Okay, and interestingly enough, I believe Scott is now like the fire commissioner over there. I ran across an article that late last night that mentioned it. I think he won the election over there. So the IAB wasn't able to find video of the incident, but it seems to me like now I'm not saying the IAB was in the right here. I think that IAB lieutenant probably got a little frustrated that he couldn't get anywhere in this case and went a little overzealous on trying to dig up stuff on Junior. But I also think it's very curious that you couldn't find any witnesses, you couldn't find any video related to the fight, and also Scott Senior and his family are very prominent in that department. You know, I don't want to make allegations, but I know we could all put two and two together here and figure out why that case you weren't really going to find anything solid on it. But Scott Jr. he had his shield. Again, he lost his shield in 2020, and it wasn't until January of 2022 that he got his shield back and got everything that he lost. Now, what happened in January of 2022? A certain mayor took office in January of 2022. I wonder who that is. I wonder who. Now we know why Scott. I think he had a fundraiser for Eric Adams before he got into office. Now
True.
we kind of know why he did that. So I think without Eric Adams having gotten there and gotten rid of Resnick, and I don't think the ball would have started to get Scott Jr. back into the detective rank. I think Scott's career might have been dead in the water, at least for several years, had it not been for the change in leadership. And what I believe is that change, that impetus came from Eric Adams.
You know what, John? We should make Long Island the sixth borough, because that's where the union actually, most of them reside. So Mike Marino says, and this is exactly what we've been talking about. Again, I'm going to keep drilling this into everyone's head because it is so true. And that's the tiered system. Mike Marino, what's up, brother? He says, Essex's son was arrested in New Jersey while on probation, wasn't fired. There is a tiered system. If Essex's son was tier 3 general population, especially on probation, he would have been fired. No doubt about it, because he's in the right tier, the right connections. He's on the job. He's doing well. Ironically, right, Essex is part of a full package lawsuit. But it's, again, paving the way for their offspring. And we say it quite often. I mean, you could look time and time again, and people that have went through the job, that are chiefs on the job, there's a good majority of the upper echelon and past upper echelon that are part of a deity, and they pave the way for their offspring, and they're part of this tier 2 class. Not only is it a tiered system with the NYPD now, excuse me, it's almost become like divided class, with different classes. It's 100% Game of Thrones when it comes to the NYPD. Scott Munro's son, there's no doubt about it, got a nice, soft launching pad because of Eric Adams. Eric Adams is the drug dealer, rhetorically speaking, before someone tries to, serve us with litigation. Rhetorically speaking, he's the drug dealer handing out ice cream. Scott Munro is, and the other union heads are receiving the ice cream. They're going on the great adventure trips. Their trips for some of these people in the job include Dubai, Israel, other things. And these amenities keep people shut and overshadow, and they can't see through their blind spot. And that blind spot is a corrupted scandal, an administration just completely tainted by corruption. And one thing we learned in the NYPD is the appearance of impropriety is just enough. You don't need complete evidence to know if something doesn't look right in the NYPD, you shouldn't be doing it, because you have to protect an image, the presence and the image, and protecting that patch is so important for the police department. So did Scott Munro's son get taken care of because of his connections in this tiered system? Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. Was he, does it happen to be, is it ironic that he's actually deserving of it? It appears to be that way. It appears that the path he was given, that he actually worked during that path. But if he wasn't part of this deity and part of this tiered system, would he have been given that path in comparison to someone else? There are people right now in the NYPD with 17, 18 years on the job who have been grinding their entire careers. They can't get any decent units. They can't get promoted. There's plenty of third-grade detectives throughout the entire police department that will never see second grade, who have done extensive casework, who work on wires, who work on cases, who put together multiple cases in different bureaus and different boroughs without the police department, and they'll never see those amenities because they just don't have the right connections and the right access. There is a tiered system in the NYPD, and for some people to say it's always been that way, and it will always be that way. But the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and we have to speak about this, because if we don't, it's not going to stop. And as things progress, they only get worse. And that's what's happening here. It's just getting worse and worse over time. And with Eric Adams, it's the worst we've ever seen it. It's at its peak. And because Eric Adams was an insider, now he wasn't a cop, but he was an insider within the NYPD, he understands how these favors and leverages and amenities worked. And he utilized the NYPD exactly as we predicted. We spoke about this podcast. He utilized the unions. He utilized the upper echelon. He put stupid, incompetent people there to have leverage on them. So leverage with favoritism is power. Is it quid pro quo? It appears to be that way.
So I'm gonna totally agree with Marlon on that fact. So here's the thing. Like I'm like a little jaded when it comes to IAB. One, I think that IAB did target Munro, right? I think they did. Now, was he deserving of that target? Possibly. But the people who targeted him, that team, that lieutenant, I mean, if you know what they did and the scumbag moves that they did prior, you would say anything that they did in any IAB cases that they did should be looked into and overturned. But they weren't. And so you're right, Marlon. There was one guy that got his IAB case overturned. There was one guy that was wrongfully, or maybe not even wrongfully, maybe deserved, but maybe it was an overstep from IAB that got that decision from IAB turned around. We're going to be delving into IAB a lot later on in this podcast, probably after the holidays. We just got a FOIL request back from our case with IAB, where we had an active member of the NYPD threatening our family while the whole upper echelon of the NYPD was sending their paid goons after us and their criminal friends. So we're going to be going into that whole case, and we're going to show you exactly how IAB operates. So I don't like IAB. I don't like the way they operate. I think particularly when you look at Group 1, their job is to cover up for the upper echelon of the NYPD. Their job is not to investigate corruption. They're not doing that. When you look at Group 52, the Integrity Test Division, they're doing hit jobs for the upper echelon of the NYPD. They're going after people and doing hit jobs, and they're reopening cases that they want to go. So I don't know what happened in Suffolk. I'm sure, look, they had a lot of pull and patch hog. Fine. I don't really care. And to be fair, plenty of guys on this job getting in fights off duty. It is what it is. Shit happens. I'm not knocking anybody for who knows who was at fault, who doesn't. You know what I mean? I'm not knocking anyone for you're out and you get in a fist fight. It happens. It doesn't make you a bad person. Doesn't make you a criminal. Doesn't make you anything. We got to be smarter as NYPD police officers. But sometimes you can't avoid these things. It is what it is. Sometimes you're in an unavoidable situation. That's why I always say, don't put yourself in the situation. Don't go hang out with idiots. You know the guy's a drunk and he sits on a bar stool and they name a bar stool after him. Don't go hang out with that. He's probably not a good dude. He's probably going to cause you more of a headache than he's worth. You know what I mean? Like, probably don't do that. So, but I totally get what you're saying. Would that redemption have came in January of 22 if not for the relationship between President Scott Munro and Eric Adams? Absolutely not. That redemption probably still doesn't happen. He's probably still a cop today. You know, and so I totally agree with you on that point. The other point is, if you remember when Scott was on the podcast, and Scott, you should have came on. I mean, I think it's completely cowardice to not come on. You know what I mean? I think that it's, you know, I think we gave you every opportunity to come on, defend yourself. We've been nothing but gentlemen to you, and I think that we're totally giving you a fair shake here, and fairer than we should, to be honest with you. And so, but when he was on this podcast, he also made mention that, hey, my son didn't want to take the shot. My son didn't want to take the shot. So did he take the shot? Because it didn't sound like he did to me. You know, and now to be fair, he has 2 sons on the job, so I don't know what son he was referring to. And we kind of really didn't go deep into it because we were talking about, well, whatever happened. There was actually a shooting that morning, so he had to run off. But to me, it sounded like, oh, no, yeah, my kids didn't have to take the shot. Right? Because I don't, but like if your son didn't want to take the shot, he didn't have to take the shot because you're friends with Eric Adams. But if Marlon didn't want to take the shot, he's either going to take the shot or he's going to get terminated. If I don't want to take the shot, I'm either going to take the shot or get terminated. Now I was like, I'm not doing it, and I fussed it out. I'm not doing it. But would that ever happen to any of your kids? I don't think so. Would that have happened to any of the Chiefs' kids? I don't think so. You know what I mean? And that's the scam that's always been there. And that's why people are furious, because it's do as I say, not as I do. And look, you know, I see a lot of pro Munro people in the chat, and that's fine. Did you have 147 collars in your first year and we're on 2 wiretaps in your first 5 years? Guy, 147 collars in your first career, in your first year on the job. You're not taking quality arrests. You're not making quality arrests. You're taking every arrest that comes up. Does that show you're a hard worker and you have a solid work ethic? Absolutely. Is that someone that's probably going to be a great cop? Absolutely. But he only goes on 9 more years, 10 more years, and he only gets 100 more? And he gets on those 2 wiretap cases right away? Are you getting on wiretap cases with 5 years on without knowing anybody? I don't know. Exactly. So, I mean, look, I hear your point. We're not knocking the kid saying he's a bad worker or he's not a hard worker. We're not saying anything, but your point is really, it's honestly driving the facts home that people are pissed on even more. So I would just stop.
Yeah, absolutely. And think of it for a second. I kind of expect you to have that amount of collars when your dad is the head of the detectives union. I mean, but before he became head of the DEA, he still was number 3 in the union. So with your dad connected to the union and to all the detectives on the job, the breadth of experience that your dad could expose you to, I expect you to have that much collars. You know, I mean, think of it for a second. It's like you growing up in that culture and being exposed to all these experienced detectives. Well, if you want to get on this career path, you should have been taking advice from them. You should have been picking their brains and being a super cop by the time you get on the job, you know? So come on. A lot of us, like, you know, myself included, when I finally got into a sector car, both me and my partner were rookies, you know? We had nobody to teach us. We had nobody to tell us how to get a gun from a car. We had to, you know, I told the story before. We had to work our way from learning stops in a 511 to DWEs, and then finally, you know, understanding how to pull a gun out of that car and not get the gun tossed. Okay, we had nobody to teach us. So if Scott Jr. was doing a wire case on patrol, well, good for him. But think of it, he has a lot more exposure to experience and knowledge that you, the ordinary cop who comes in here, doesn't. And the job, as we said many times before, doesn't exactly do a great job of field training cops and of imparting the knowledge that a lot of the experienced veterans have onto the young guys.
I think that's a great point, right? Which is why we could say that someone that is part of a deity, a family business of being cops, that they already have a leg up before they enter the police academy because they already have had family dinners. They've had conversations about what is police work, what is police culture, something I never had. Maybe Marlon, John's the same. John, I know you didn't have anybody in your family who was a cop, and I think Marlon yours is the same thing, right? First generation to come to this country. You know, most of my family served in the military, but no one was ever a cop. I was the first to be a cop, and you know, it's a different mission. So I never had those conversations at dinner about what police culture is and what it is to be a cop. For me and for most of us here on our network, it was something new. So we didn't have that family legacy to have family dinners, just like when you watch the show Blue Bloods, to understand what police culture is and what it is and what's necessary to build your resume. That's something that we had to learn along the way from within the job, from people we didn't know, relationships that we built within the police department. So I do think that if there's a deity in the police department, that it still could be merit-based, right? Because you already have that experience. You know how to get yourself noticed by going out there making an arrest. You know that a good work ethic and understand policing culture and how it works to be a team within the police department to get yourself that merit. And now we're not saying that Scott Munro's son, didn't take advantage of those things, but he did have a soft landing, you know, when he was targeted by internal affairs when it came to Eric Adams. And it shows there is a tiered system. When you're part of these tiers and you have the right relationships and the right access, it could be a game changer and change your entire career. And for Scott Munro's son, Eric Adams getting elected mayor was exactly that. And that's why I always give that analogy of getting that ice cream. Because if you're getting the ice cream or you're getting those great adventure trips, you're overlooking and it's overshadowing all the wrongdoings that are going on because you're being taken care of and your family's being taken care of. So these are things that I think that people have to avoid, you know, especially. And I feel bad. I feel sorry for Scott Munro's son also, because honestly, we don't know him, right? We can only speak of him based on his record. And his record seems to be that given this path, he did go out there and work and did work hard. And so no matter what, it will be always be overshadowed because of the relationship with Scott Munro Sr., Detective Endowment Association president, and his relationship with Eric Adams. And Eric Adams, I don't think anybody could argue, is a failed mayor. For one, how can you say he's not a failed mayor? He couldn't get enough support behind him to stay in the race. He had to drop out. And percentage-wise, you can see the history of New York or any city is most mayors get reelected. So that's just shows a failure right there. He's also the first to get indicted. Eric Adams' entire administration has spent so much money on lawsuits, things that the union is not really addressing, especially when it's Scott Munro, because of the relationship that he has with Eric Adams. And he even said it in an article where he said that he'll miss Eric Adams because of the access he had, and that Eric Adams would always pick up the phone. So clearly it benefits him personally. And what we need to look at is how does it benefit the union? Now, does Scott care about the members? You know, for some, in many ways, I do think he cares about the members, but also there is a scale here where he's also looking out for his own interest and for his son. Now, do people look out for their families in life in any organization? Yes. But to what point? That's why we need a system that balances this out. Because if not, we have this tiered system and it's such a clear breakdown. If your general population, this job, it's really damning. And you don't have access, you don't have amenities, the discipline comes down on you. And then you're looking at people that are part of that tier 2 and tier 1 system. And that's really part of that breakdown of morale. It breaks down camaraderie because you don't see a future unless you're part of these these tiers that have this access. You're not getting promoted by Rocket Fuel. These are all promotions by Rocket Fuel, and they're access by Rocket Fuel because of their relationships, because of their access. I would rather someone just be honest and say, hey, I'm the union president or I'm a chief. And because of that, it's given my son or daughter more opportunities and more access. So, hey, you need to get promoted to give your family access also. But no one's admitting that. No one's admitting that at all, and no one will.
Yeah, so Thirsty Thursday started early today, boys. What is it? It's Wednesday. It's 8:50 something in the morning, 8:57 in the morning. And here we go. Here is the worst, most unprofessional, undeserving NYPD chief of department ever, John Schell. Here's what he wrote. He wrote this at 8:53 a.m. on December 17th, which is today. Maybe he's having a few cocktails in the yard this morning out in the cold. I used to like to drink LaFrog, John, so maybe check that out. It's nice. You know.
What time does Joyce's Tavern open?
It's a good mossy peaty scotch, you know. It pairs well with the cold weather. So so here he goes. He says their hypocrisy knows no bounds. Just mean people. Oh, we're mean. Oh, wow. Wow, John. Weird. You know, it's funny. When we go through the IAB case, I hope you're tuned in too, because we're gonna have a lot to say about you in particular, and how little or at all you weren't investigated. Maybe you could explain why you were running my name in NYPD computers and were not punished for it. But yeah, all right. Anyway, let's get on to that. So he says the finest cast: Eric Dim Cobb, John D. McCary, and Sal Greco, who, by the way, isn't even on this show, but he has to add Sal, I think, because he's jealous of Sal's hair. You know. Like I've been saying, are no better than CCRB and 50A. They want to hurt the New York City PBA. Okay. They criticize a young man for getting promoted, a son of a detective. What we all want as dads for our children, an NYPD Christmas promotion. This guy is like, he's legit. So, John, just so you know, we all said that he probably deserved to get promoted. But it's a little crazy that he's getting right on the way out when Scott and you have been basically fluffers for the Adams administration, right? You basically covered up corruption your entire time, and you covered up the dire straits that the NYPD is in, both you and Scott. So, you know, if you're looking to be a fluffer, if Mondani needs fluffers, you two would be first in line. I'm going to recommend both of you first. So let's just get that straight. A joyous day for the family and for the son who earned the day. However, this dad happens to be the president of the NYPD. It just happens to all be a coincidence, John. So let's dump on the family and cast a cloud on their day. So let me say it for all of us. Shameful. So again, this is what we do now. We are podcasters. We talk about the NYPD. We talk about New York City politics. We talk about the inner workings of the NYPD. And instead of going out there and lying for the city and the administration, what we do is we give a voice to the rank and file of the entire police department, of every single union, including the DEA. And it's detectives, working detectives, that are actually mad about this. Working detectives that didn't get to drive you and stay home and put in for overtime, or drive Jeffrey Madry around, or drive Eric Adams around, and then get promoted to deputy mayors and assistant commissioners and flout basically all of the rules. So we're actually talking about the rank and file, not people like you. That's what we're talking about. Okay, John? So in case you didn't get that. Hypocrisy. And this is where he goes in to say how Scott called him right away. Maybe they had a few drinks together. Eric Dim called the dad and asked him to come on their podcast to talk about his own son. And also, would he be willing to talk about my pension? Trollers. Eric, did you ask about John Schell's pension?
No, not at all. I didn't ask about John Schell's pension. I just made a comment. I said, you know, it's interesting how somehow John Schell came up in the conversation. It's interesting how, don't you think that there's a tiered system on this job? John Schell, I can't think of a cop that has gotten 3/4 disability without going sick, and John Schell landed that. So we're talking about the tiered system. And I said, there's no doubt about it. Your son got promoted part of this tiered system. So I made the comparison with John Shell. So I wasn't asking about you, Shell. I don't need to ask about you. I already know about you, who you are. Every Thursday, you let us know who you are. What are you talking about?
He lets everyone in Joyce's know about his pension the whole time and how they didn't even properly report it in the paper. Yeah, John. You're talking to people in Joyce's Tavern. You think they're not videoing you? You think they're not laughing at you? You're a loser, dude. Like, seriously. Nobody
Actually,
likes
listen, Scott and I had a great conversation. There's no doubt about it. It was pretty transparent. I gave him the opportunity to come on. We had a great conversation. I said, there is a tiered system in the NYPD that people can't avoid. And John Shell fits into that correlation. He's tier 1. He got all the amenities, including 3/4 disability, without going sick. Unheard of.
Yeah, and he basically, he stepped on his mentor's grave and jumped right into the seat of chief of department. He had no business being the chief of department or even the chief of patrol, right? And that's why the line on his bar stool, it's like so good because he's like, my loyalty, let loyalty be my legacy or some shit like that. It's like, yeah, you're loyal to a fault because you're loyal to corruption. You're loyal to anything. Like I said, most of you would walk your own mothers into the gas chamber for Eric Adams. That's like that's your loyalty. You're loyal to the wrong people. You're not loyal to the rank and file. You're not loyal to your oath. You're not loyal to God. You're not loyal to the truth. You're loyal to who could do what for you. That's what you're loyal for. And he says, you want to mock and criticize people, that's your choice, but leave the children out of it. You guys are parents. Again, I think we've defended Scott. We've gotten some really nasty message about Scott, and we didn't blast any of that stuff out there. We're not, because we don't have it confirmed. And like I said, compared to the people that you got promoted and that Eric Adams got promoted, this kid should be a first grader, or maybe even he should be a deputy mayor. So let's get that straight out there right off the bat. And then Merry Christmas, everyone, and congrats to Detective Munro and his family. And then he got all the unions. The unions are happy with us. The locker room's in a good place. So Merry Christmas to everybody. And look, this is what we do now. Unfortunately, you guys created the finest Unfiltered. Again, you guys created it. The rank and file of the NYPD had no way to tell the world what was happening inside of the New York City Police Department, the corruption that was happening, the nepotism that was happening, and really the quality of life it is to be a working cop, a working detective, a working sergeant, a working lieutenant, a working captain. And people believe that there was actually accountability for the New York City Police Department. And what we've come to find out is there is no accountability for actually people that are in this upper tier. They're allowed to criminally associate. They're allowed to help their criminal friends run their criminal enterprises. They're allowed to act as criminal thug mafia cops themselves. And absolutely nothing happens to them because there is no Internal Affairs Bureau and there is no Department of Investigation. And it's all just a big sham. And New York City today looks like Tammany Hall in 1880. Maybe even worse, actually, because we're a different society today. So Merry Christmas, John Shell.
It's Hanukkah right now, so I don't know if John Henry's be Jewish.
Happy Hanukkah, yeah. Mazel tov.
He's celebrating right now with some Manischewitz.
Yeah, sure reads like it. So what I don't get is, I don't get is you're saying, Shell is saying that, hey, that he's a young man who deserved the getting the promotion, while at the same time he's saying you can't criticize him because he's he's a family of a union president. Leave the children alone, leave the kids alone. Yeah.
Why do you hate the kids?
Yeah. Listen, man, Scott Jr. is a grown ass man. Come on.
And he's probably more of a man than both of you, talking like little yentas, about us. Oh, they called me and they wanted me to come on the podcast.
Marlon, he just admitted there's a tier system without saying it, that you can't say anything about the union president's son because he's in tier 2.
Yeah.
Don't talk about tier 2, brother.
Right there. So listen, and like we said on this, that in a lot of ways he's kind of a victim of this, because it's like he'll always have that cloud around him, and in a lot of ways it's unfair for him to no matter how hard he works, he'll have that cloud over him. So we said that as well. So it's not like we're being unfair to him, but we're pointing out the unfairness of the entire process here. Okay, and the unfairness is, if there was another cop who got in trouble in that fight, okay, he would have been on patrol somewhere in the Bronx or Staten Island, and that would have been the end of him. Okay, his career would have been dead for a couple of years. But instead, because his father happens to be Scott Munro, he got his shield back. Now he's getting second grade with 14 years on the job. Okay, so the whole point here, Chief, is that this process is unfair, and it's unfair because we pointed this out many times before about the people in your circles and the people who've gotten a disproportionate amount of overtime under your supervision. Okay, so you yourself know the system is unfair, and so I don't understand why you're even weighing in here to make yourself look silly.
I mean, so clearly I don't expect John Shell to get the point. And he's actually admitting there's a tiered system. And we're not saying, and I think we're actually giving a very fair assessment. I think we've been very respectful and professional towards Scott Munro Jr. and Scott Munro Sr. also, which is why we called him. We want to get in front of this and give Scott an opportunity to defend himself and talk about this tiered system in the NYPD. Maybe defend it or explain it, to be transparent and be accountable and be open to the members to have these conversations. So we're not saying Scott Munro Sr. is a bad guy, but what I'm saying is that there is a system in place that has been going on for years, and it's at its peak with Eric Adams. It's far worse than we've ever seen, and people have taken advantage of that system, and they're short-sighted, and they have a blind spot by thinking it's okay. Scott Munro and many others, I believe, have become institutionalized within the NYPD, thinking it's okay. And many guys retire and they still have that same ideology that it's okay because in this system, that's how it's done. You take care of your offspring. You get the amenities. You make sure you have access and connection to the right people. And if they're taking care of you, then you overlook the other things that are going on. So it's been part of this wheel that keeps going on. And I'm not saying it didn't happen before. And so I want people to understand, nowhere on the Finance Unfiltered have we said that once Eric Adams came in, all these things appeared. There was never any nepotism. There was never a tiered system. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that these things have been around, but with Eric Adams, it's at its peak. It's public. It's in your face, and you can't deny it. And it's the worst we've ever seen. And people are taking advantage of the system. There's a balance there. The reason why Eric Adams is so effective on having this leverage over people is because they've allowed themselves. I mean, I'm not saying Scott's a bad guy and he has bad intentions. He wants to hurt people, but he sure as hell wants to take advantage of a system that's allowed him to take care of his son. And Scott Munro Jr. is not a little boy. We're talking about a grown man who's in the police department. And it's a nice thing. Should we have families in the police department, organization, any organization? Sure, it's a beautiful thing to have your son go on the job or your daughter get on the job, your uncles, your aunts, and have that family deity. Yes, but it's how we should still want them to build their lives on merit. And for John Shell to say it's a nice Christmas present, you're admitting that there could be some quid pro quo, that it's okay, that it could be part of this tiered system, that, hey, it's a gift to Scott Munro. That's what you're saying, John Shell, in your tweet, that you potentially could be inebriated. That's what you're saying. So no one's asking about your pension, John Shell. We don't need to ask because you put it all out in the public. You've been bragging about it for weeks on end. But I do want to ask, and maybe you can put this out in your next tweet. So I'd like to know the steps for some of the police officers I know, and it's a great recruiting tool. How do you get on the NYPD? And how do you document, God forbid you should get injured and you never go sick, how do you get a 3-quarter disability pension to make sure someone's taken care of? So maybe they'll go sick in retirement.
Pat Donahue says, when Scott Jr. was arrested and the Munro family initiated a lawsuit against the NYPD, the father petitioned the DEA to pay for his son's lawsuit. So, again, Marlon Bethel was terminated from the New York City Police Department. Do you know what he was terminated for? I don't know. Does the DEA know? Marlon, do you know why you were terminated? You were terminated. You remain terminated non-disciplinary. Do you know why you were terminated?
Yeah. I don't even know when I was terminated technically,
No, but I'm dead serious. Do you know what the charge is against you officially?
Yeah, what charges? No charges, no allegations, okay?
No department trial.
No trial. Nothing.
No, so Article 78 is when something happens, you have 90 days to file. The DEA pretended like they didn't even know who Marlon was, a member of their own department. Now you have a guy off duty who gets in trouble, whether deserving or not. Again, I don't know. I wasn't there. I have no idea. Could have been at a bar and the guy didn't like that he was sitting in his bar stool because his name was etched on it. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened at that bar. I don't care. I understand stupid things happen. And I don't think you're a bad guy if you get in a fight once in your life. But I don't care what happened. But the bottom line is there's an actual allegation there. Off-duty incident, maybe alcohol's involved, maybe it's not, whatever it is. There's an off-duty incident. There's something that happens. You're arrested as a result of it. And you're petitioning the DEA to pay for that. And yet we got a guy, we have a job action taken against him for absolutely no reason. And you have a close personal relationship with the mayor of the city of New York, and you allow your member to be terminated. And not only do you allow him to be terminated, you pretend he doesn't exist. That's what's even worse, that this isn't even talked about. And then the whole thing is, well, I can't really talk to him because he has litigation with the city. Do you think that we're that stupid? We've watched over the course of our lifetimes, we've watched Al Sharpton and all of these advocates and activists bully New York City into settling lawsuits. The mayor of New York City, if he wanted to drop Marlon's lawsuit tomorrow and reinstate him and compensate him, all he'd have to do is say, okay, drop that lawsuit, reinstate and compensate him. Sign of the pen. Do you think that we're idiots? Because we're not. We're not. And you are unwilling to do that for your own membership. And that's the problem. The problem is not that you hooked your son up. It's not. I'll hook my son up too. So would you. And so would everybody else on this chat. You would hook your son up. He's right in your face. The people that are closest to you, you see. You're not going to know the guy in the Bronx if you're from Staten Island. You're not going to know the guy in Staten Island if you're from the Bronx. You're going to know the people in your circle, and you're going to hook those people up. And I don't even care. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that as long as they're deserving. It appears Scott's deserving. But here's the big but. You're not doing shit for your members. That's the other thing. What are you doing? I could pick up the phone. I could call the mayor whenever I want. Why? For things that you need. It has nothing to do with your members. It has nothing to do with the health and welfare of your members. Because if it did, you would be kicking and screaming that you lost more detectives under this administration than at any other point in history. You'd be kicking and screaming what the hell's been going on in the New York City Police Department. You'd be kicking and screaming about the caseload of working detectives. But you're not. What are you doing? You're running cover. Oh, it's because it's Zohran Mamdani. He's not the mayor, motherfucker. Like, are we kidding? Is this a joke? Is this like a real joke? Like, that's the problem. The problem is nobody cares. These union positions are self-serving positions. That's what it is. The people that rise to the rank of chief in the New York City Police Department, and people are saying in here that I don't criticize Italian people who are on the job, which is absolute bullshit. I said that the biggest pussies on this job are the Columbia Association. I respect the Guardians who attacked me. I respect Noble who attacked me. I respect the Hispanic Society and all those people that are in leadership way more than I respect any Italian members on this job right now currently. Because they don't stand up for their own fucking members. They don't stand up for their own people. They don't try to get their people promoted. So I don't know what you're talking about. I think that they're the most ballless people on the job right now. So fuck the Columbia Association and fuck anybody that's in leadership that's an Italian, because they could care less. They don't give a shit. Oh, and by the way, that also goes for the Holy Name Society, Cops for Christ, and everybody else that pretends to be that I'm a devout Christian. Yeah, but you let Christians get abused on this job and you didn't say a word. And Shell, shame on you too, because you didn't say a word either. Have another drink for us, brother.
Yeah. I agree 100%
Happy Hanukkah.
with what John says. You know, the thing is, when Scott became president, there's an article in the Chief, right? I'll post a link up for you guys in chat. But he specifically says in that article, he highlights the treatment that his son got, right? And he says at the top of his agenda is ensuring that his members are dealt with fairly when they stand accused of misconduct. Munro has pledged to stand by detective he feels are being unjustly disciplined by the department. Right? You would think a guy who thought his son was being unfairly disciplined in the job would then make it his mission to bring equity to that disciplinary process, right? But instead he hasn't. Okay, and that is the problem. The problem is why hasn't he? And it all goes back to that. Okay, because the problem is you have a job as union boss. Okay, you have a job. You're getting paid by membership to fight for them, to fight for their rights on the job. Okay, you're being paid by them. Okay, but instead of doing your job, you became neutered. Okay, you became neutered and because of that relationship you had with Eric Adams. Okay, and that's the problem. If Scott was the most vocal union boss and he was out there bringing up all these problems, if he was out there talking about the medical experiment that you guys had to take, and now a lot of you guys are getting advanced cancers because of that, and blood clots, and also tangent. I got a message from a cop a couple of days ago about the information that I put out regarding the adverse effects to some of the batch numbers of the vaxes that you guys got. Okay, he told me he had gotten a lot of blood clots after the having taken the vax. Okay, has Scott talked about any of that? No, he hasn't. That is the problem. If Scott had been the leader that he should be, then there would be few of us asking questions about Junior's rapid advance of his advanced promotions and of Eric Adams having saved his career.
You're spot on. That's why I have been sounding the horn since even before I was retired about the disciplinary matrix. Why isn't anyone pushing back on the disciplinary matrix, especially those in the upper echelon, especially the unions who have access and the ability to actually have these things changed if they push hard enough? And that's something I've always been asking. And we know the reason why. The reason why is because the disciplinary matrix does benefit and helps people in that tiered system. That's why there is a list of mitigating factors. And again, I want to remind people, please, our friends and listeners, if you're an active cop, you have to read the disciplinary matrix several times. You have to dissect it. The way it's written, just your first read, you won't get it and understand what we're talking about. You have to read it several times to really understand the impact of the disciplinary matrix and say to yourself, you'll say, wow, I can't believe the unions aren't pushing on this. That should be the number one issue right now. Aligned on parallel with that, the disciplinary matrix and the CCRB, we should see the unions up in arms pushing back and forth. And as John told you earlier, the unions are entitled, and so are the members, entitled to a contract. For it's the law. So whether there's a union or not, contracts will always be in effect. So I want to see the unions take a step back from talking about salaries. And we had a great conversation here on Monday with retired Inspector Kenneth Quick. And he even said in his study, talking about retention and mass exits within the police department, that salary is not even an issue in that conversation. So that's another message to the unions. Why are we constantly talking about salary? Number one focus should be the disciplinary matrix, and on parallel with that is the Civilian Complaint Review Board. And the reason why is because that disciplinary matrix protects, and it's an amenity that helps anyone that's in that tier 1 or tier 2 class of the NYPD. If you're tier 3 in general population, you flip that disciplinary matrix over and you get hit with the aggravating factors, and it's far different. There are 2 classes in that disciplinary matrix. Mitigating factors, that's your tier 1 and tier 2 class, and your aggravating factors, that's your tier 3 general population class, where you're just fucked. Exactly what Marlon brilliantly put together disciplinary matrix, because that disciplinary matrix, the way that Marlon broke down, should be the reading material for the NYPD, because that's exactly what it is. It's funny, yes, it's humorous, but it's exactly what it is. If you pull it apart and rename mitigating factors and aggravating factors and the presumptive penalties and all the minutia that goes on in the disciplinary matrix, you have to say to yourself, wow, now I understand why the upper echelon doesn't try to push and get rid of this. I understand why the union doesn't get rid of this, because it's a great tool. It's a great tool to save people's asses and save their careers. It's also a great tool to actually show that the NYPD is enforcing discipline, because there's people that face harsh penalties with that and face termination. But what they really should drill down is, you could see quite often 2 people within the NYPD have the same infractions and have far different paths. One person gets terminated, one person ends up in a detective squad, and another path to get promoted. So the disciplinary matrix is not something they want to go away.
No, and then the other thing is, like Scotty had all these big plans when he was coming in, right? He was like, "Oh, I'm bringing my members into the fray. They're gonna weigh in on who we endorse. We're gonna do this. Never been done. Never been done before. I'm gonna have my members tell me who our money's gonna go to and how we're gonna endorse." And he completely backpedaled on the whole thing. He completely backpedaled on it. Like totally full of shit. He goes on One Tough Podcast to listen to, Bo Dietl Network, right? Bo Dietl on 77 WABC. Right, he goes on that network and he says like all these big things that he's going to do, and he doesn't do any of it. So he's going to talk about here that he's going to give detectives a survey on who they should endorse for the president of the United States. Never been done before. Never been done. I'm going to bring them into the fray. I'm going to do this. And Bo Dietl's like, yeah, that's great. That's great. I was a detective too. Yeah, I was a Goodfellas too. I gave this guy money. I gave that guy money. Right.
And so Wall Street.
Yeah, he was in everything. He was in everything. Another grifter, right? Another grifter. He doesn't like Eric Adams when he's getting indicted. He's best friends with him after the case gets dropped. Get it, Bo. Take it to rails, bro. So he talks about how he's going to give detectives a voice in the political arena for one time, because what do the unions do? They just endorse people. They just endorse politicians that don't have the best interests of their members, that the members don't want. And so he goes, I'm going to put out a survey, and then we're going to endorse for the president of the United States who we want. And then what happens? 94% of his members say they want to endorse Donald Trump, and Kathy Hochul says, you better not put that out, and they don't put it out, right? And I personally think they thought that the job was so woke that they thought it was going to be Kamala Harris. That's what I think. I think they thought it was going to be much closer. And so here you go. Here's Scott about what he was going to do that he's never done, and then goes out and endorses the most corrupt mayor in New York City history, the mayor that has caused more attrition in the New York City Police Department than ever before, and the mayor who has ripped up and shredded our contracts and thrown them in the garbage.
Everything is transparent, and we work as a board. I put a lot of committees together, and one of the committees that are coming up right now is the Political Action Committee, where we're vetting all of these politicians, the Assembly and the Senate.
Good. Let's see what they're really about.
Yep. And if you believe in law enforcement, whether you're a Democrat or whether you're a Republican, we're going to endorse you. And that's actually what I'm doing right now with the presidential poll. Never done before. I'm bringing my members, active and retired, in the political arena here with us.
I like that.
And I'm letting them vote in this poll, and it just went out today. And and it's due back on September 5th on who the union should endorse for the president of the United States.
Wow, I like that a lot. That's real democracy. No,
Yes.
you're not the emperor.
Nope.
You're a representative of all our members. That's great.
Correct. And I want them to weigh in on it. Now, listen, I may use it for the in 2026. You know, we have the governor election.
Yeah.
We may use it for the mayor's election. I don't know. But in this election, I felt it was important because of the times that we're living in right now, that our members speak out and tell us how they feel.
I love it.
And I think that's very important.
Very refreshing.
So, yeah, he was going to, it sounds great, but he never did it. He got the results of the poll. He never put it out, and he would have never did it for the mayor election because what we see is he has a close personal friendship with Eric Adams. I know he was always going to endorse Eric Adams. He endorsed Eric Adams with all of the corruption scandal the day after more indictments dropped about the Adams administration and knowing he had zero shot to win. Knowing. Oh, and so did Lou Turco, and so did the CEA. Disgraceful. Disgraceful. Oh, and the SBA too. Disgraceful. Disgraceful.
Yeah, absolutely disgraceful. And a completely terrible look for the union to have endorsed Eric Adams after all that he's done, after all the scandals and all the corruption he's linked to. You have the union tied to that, to him still. Ridiculous. And I see a comment in there from PBE asking if Scott ever reached out to me about getting reinstated. And I mentioned it numerous times before, PBE, but I'll just go through it quickly. Scott came on here. He was asked about that, and he gave Eric his number. I called him. He told me he wanted me to come in and have a meeting with him. I go, okay, fine, but keep in mind I have a lawsuit against the city, so there's certain things that I won't talk about, okay? So he says, okay, bring your lawyer in too. I go, why do I need my lawyer? You know my situation. But he kept on. He said, bring your lawyer. I'll go, okay. I reached out to my lawyer, finally got a date that we all agreed on. Scott agreed on it too. It was set, you know? And then he calls me back a couple of minutes later. Oh, sorry. I got a meeting with the PC. The PC called me that day. The PC saying that she needs a meeting with me on that day, so I got to cancel. And from then on, a couple months later, I got another phone call from Scott saying that, yeah, he's working on it, and we're still going to have this meeting because apparently me and another detective, I believe he's from the bomb squad, he's going to have a meeting with both of us. That was going on 6 months now since that last phone call, okay? So there's a lot of promises that Scott has made, and he's yet to deliver on them. Now, like I told him, I don't need a meeting because what's there to discuss? You know my situation. It's simple, and it's not just my situation. It's all of the detectives on the job. Okay, this isn't about like the medical experiment. It's about due process and the unfairness of the system. Okay. So it's not that complicated, and he could have had that meeting months ago, but he didn't. And he, just like the promises he made when he first got to the union, and like he said on that podcast there, he's yet to deliver. And the question you need to ask yourselves is, why hasn't he done it? Why hasn't he spoken up against Eric Adams, the stuff Adams has done, and the corruption in the department? And why has he still, even after it happened, still endorsed Eric Adams for re-election?
Well, that's why it's important to not honor, but acknowledge that we understand that there's a deity, that people are going to take care of their sons, their daughters, their family members. But if you're doing that while you're taking care of the members and also general population on a level playing field, then no one's going to bat an eye. That no one's going to actually stand up, like, for instance, on this network and say it's an atrocity because there's equal distribution of wealth in the police department, that people are getting amenities and access. But that's not what's happening here. I mean, we have a tale of two different detectives right now. We can compare the legacy and the career of Marlon Bethel, and we could also compare that to Scott Munro. Now, we're not saying Scott Munro is not deserving, but if Marlon Bethel was Scott Munro, Marlon Bethel would not be terminated today. Can anyone argue that if Marlon Bethel was Scott Munro. If Marlon Bethel's father was the union president, would Marlon be fired today? Absolutely not. And John raised a good question. Did Scott Munro Jr. take the shot? We'll never know. But it doesn't matter. There is a tiered system. And if Marlon Bethel's father was Marlon Bethel Sr., the Detectives Endowment Association president, Marlon Bethel would not be terminated today. He would be on a path to get promoted. But that's exactly what the disparity matrix is. Marlon would get those mitigating factors, and that's what was afforded to Scott Munro Jr. with Eric Adams, those mitigating factors, which is tier 2, which is being a part of a system that does favors for one another. So we should put on the disparity matrix, we should also add in, instead of mitigating factors, it should be favors instead of mitigating factors. And for the aggravating factors, it only applies to general population. I mean, but seriously, we have 2 detectives that both belonged in the police department, Scott Munro Jr. and Marlon Bethel, doing real police work, doing investigations, making arrests, but far different outcomes. Does it matter what form of infraction it was? If there was one, we can all agree Marlon did nothing wrong. But if you're someone that is really advocating for the vaccine, let's talk about due process. Scott Munro Jr. was treated unfairly. However, with Eric Adams, he was afforded some due process. Marlon Bethel got no due process at all. So let's compare the 2 careers. One went on to a career of getting promoted, and one who was Marlon Bethel went on to get terminated. And they are both detectives that belong within the police department. But why did one get terminated and one get promoted? And the answer is simple. Because of the tiered system, because of the connections and the access within the police department. There's no one, I don't think anyone can deny. I can't see even Jessica Tisch say, no, there's no tiered system. We all know there's a tiered system. It exists. But it's just far worse than it's ever been. There is always some form of nepotism and cronyism and favors in any organization, not just the NYPD. But this is the worst we've ever seen it in the NYPD, and that's where our forte and our wheelhouse is and what's going on here, and it's in the public eye. So to John Shell, you want to say this is a Christmas present? You're right. It is a Christmas present.
You know, and the other thing, like just getting back onto Scott as a union president, you know, you heard him talk about how he was going to bring the members into the fray, right? We're going to do things that you guys want, right? That's ultimately what you should be doing, right? Supporting your members, their best interest, what you care about. And like, there's tons of stuff happening in the New York City Police Department. Tons of stuff, right? There's tons of legislation that's going out that it should be people other than us making the public aware about. Should be, you know, the PBA and now the 19th hour is now taking out ads in city and state to tell everybody that CCRB is going to get access to body camera video. I mean, like, dude, where were you months ago when we were talking about it? Now you want to spend your members' money and put it on the city and state? Like, disgraceful. And they did it. City and state put the sponsored tweet out. God only knows how much union dues. It had like 3 likes. I think it got like 100 views. Like, are you serious? Like, your members are spending how is this helping you? It's already a done deal. Maybe if you would have advocated for this prior and raised awareness prior, we could have actually all got the bill squashed. But now that the bill's a done deal, now you're going to waste union member money and put that out. And like Scott's the same thing. He doesn't give a shit about getting the right people elected. He doesn't give a shit about what legislation's out there. He cares about what the politicians that help him and benefit him personally are telling him to do. Look at this that they put out, right? I'll read it for you because I know it's small. So he said, this is from the Detectives Endowment Association. So HR 38, Constitutional Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act of 2025. So President Trump and the Republican-controlled Congress have said that they want reciprocity when it comes to concealed carry license, meaning you have a concealed carry in the state of Florida, you could conceal carry in the state of New York. Or should I say the People's Republic of New York? Because what we know is that they don't believe in the First Amendment and they don't believe in the Second Amendment, right? Because of all the actions that they do. So the Texas Endowment Association. Now, I don't believe this is an issue for them because, one, all of the violent acts that we see in New York City daily, the majority of people are using unlicensed, unregistered firearms that they're unlicensed to carry. The overwhelming majority, people who have gun licenses in New York City are probably responsible for 0.00004% of crime on New York City streets, if they're even responsible for that. And this is what the DEA writes. You would think it was a totally different story. Daily, we read and hear the stories of ever increasing number of violent acts involving guns. Not legal guns, living out a big fact there. Not people with gun licenses, leaving that big fact out there, Scott, didn't we? The purpose of New York's gun restrictions is simple. Public safety demands fewer unregulated weapons. This legislation, if passed, will undermine our ability to limit guns in public areas. Are we limiting guns in public areas? Is that the goal of the New York City Police Department and New York State? Or are we trying to eliminate illegal guns carried by nefarious actors? Right? The wordplay is this could only come from Kathy Holtz's office in Albany, who really controls all of the NYPD unions. All of them. The results could be catastrophic. Now you're a detective, you're a retired detective. This is you that's speaking for you. The 21,000 active and retired members of the NYPD Detectives Endowment Association oppose this attempt to undermine effective weapon regulation. So what he in essence is saying that if you're a detective or you're a retired detective, you don't believe in the Second Amendment and you don't believe that law-abiding citizens in New York should be allowed to carry their registered firearms. That's what he's saying. This isn't even an issue. But yet you're going to sit there and say, we care about the wealth and the well-being of our members. This is what they're focused on. They're focused on the progressive left's agenda of continuing to form the People's Republic of New York and restrict your God-given constitutional rights as an American. This is what they're doing.
Yeah. It's like who does he work for? You know, who do you work for, Scott? This is absurd to me, you know. And Hardcore X makes a great comment here where he says honestly, these detectives deserve the union they have. Ever try talking to them about this shit? Talking to them about the shit they could care less. And it's very unfortunate, Hardcore. It's very unfortunate. And that's why I think Scott does things like this, okay? Because he feels like they can get away with it, you know? I mean, it's in a lot of ways, I don't think it's like he doesn't respect membership, you know? Because if he did, he would have feared the consequences of it. He would have feared, you know, getting behind Eric Adams again when Eric Adams had already lost the primary and he was clearly headed. He was clearly not going anywhere, and yet he still did it. You know, he still did it. Didn't fear what you guys would think. And now this, okay, which is again, you're not going to be detectives forever. You're going to eventually be retired cops, okay? And this is another one of those bills that's going to hurt you when you become Joe Citizen again, okay? So I just have to, after all these things, I have to ask myself, who does this guy actually work for? Because it's not the people that pay him.
We've said time and time again, the unions are in bed with the enemy. There's no doubt about it. And we've seen numerous press conferences where the unions are in line with the upper echelon when it comes to the press conference, and they all walk and speak in lockstep. And you have to ask yourself, well, how does that happen? It's because they're working together in tandem, and they actually come to an agreement of actually what's going to be the rhetoric in a press conference. And you would say to yourself, well, why would the union do that? Well, the union board members are looking out for their own self-interest, because it's great to be on the union board. And we talk about this often. If their appearances were pulled and they were out there wearing a uniform, what would the unions look like? And I've said this numerous times. If the union board members, including the president, if they were doing police work maybe half the time or 60% of the time, if there was some type of ratio in comparison to actually union work, would it be less political and be more of actual representative of police work and the police force itself and the members? And I do believe that would change things, but it's become so political, and they're far removed. They're far removed from actual police work. And unfortunately, I get it. I think it was Hardcore that said that they deserve it. Do the detectives deserve it? I think, unfortunately, they've been put in the dark. I mean, the way it's designed, you have these delegates, and I know because I was a delegate also. And when you're a delegate, you're pretty much a liaison from the union board, the trustees, to the precinct, to your, or whatever unit you're in, to the members. You're more of a liaison, and there's only information given to you of what they want passed on. The union board, I believe, holds on to a lot of information that is prevalent and pertinent, but it's not passed on. And that's the stuff that they hold on. And unfortunately, for most members, whether it's the PBA or DEA or SBA, have become kind of numb to it and desensitized. Like, okay, this is how it works. They really don't. Most union members don't know what their rights are. They don't know what their privileges are. And I think the union members don't realize how powerful their voice could be if they actually challenge the union. And how do you challenge them? Just simply by asking questions. Constantly, union members should be asking questions. Not just your delegate, but ask the trustees. Send an email. Call them. Ask questions. Ask tough questions. And put them in a position where they have to respond. Just right now, the same thing. The city's in a position right now where they have to respond to Bob Holden, which basically mirrors this podcast about Kaz Daughtry's retirement. That's what you need to do. How do you challenge the union? How do you put them in a position where they have to work for you? Is start asking questions. And we don't get enough of that. And that is your right to ask them questions. And everyone should be getting access and asking for the bylaws. Read the bylaws and find out what your rights are being a union member. And we talk about this often. There has to be some pushback on where your union dues are going to, because the union dues are utilized at the board without your knowledge and without your input as a union member. But unfortunately, union members are getting steamrolled because they're left in the dark. They're too busy, especially the way it's designed right now. The cops and detectives are so overworked, they don't have time to see what the union's doing. So hopefully you can get some support from this network. And that's what we're doing, is to let you know that you have to start asking these questions. We're asking questions right now, but you need to also ask questions. Maybe ask to show up to a meeting and see what goes on there. And unfortunately, is it going to change overnight? No, it's going to take a long time, but there has to be pushback. If not, it will never change.
Yeah, and Frankie Pagliucci brings up another point. So Frankie Pagliucci says he reached out to Scott more than 10 times about the breach of contract. He has nothing to say, and it's still going on. So Frankie Pagliucci was terminated from the New York City Police Department. NYPD detective who was demoted and then terminated for popping positive on a dole test for marijuana, and the dole test doesn't even test for marijuana. The dole test was thrown out. The company that they use was thrown out in Boston. Boston Supreme Court ruled that the dole test that the NYPD continues to use does not do what it claims to do and is inaccurate and cannot be used to determine whether you smoke marijuana or not. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole breach of that, but just think about that. In Boston, they were using this dole test. Somebody sued, and they won. And the judge said, you cannot use this test. This test does not prove anything. But yet the NYPD is still rolling the dice with all of you. So if any of you guys pop positive for marijuana or cocaine or anything else, you're screwed. Doesn't matter that the dole test is not accurate, and we have court cases and we have litigation and precedent that says it's not accurate. Can't be used. Doesn't matter. Hey, we'll take the lawsuit. That's New York City. Why? Because we have the courts, right? We're a one-party state here, and we don't really follow the laws of the United States. We follow our ideology. We cover up for the city of New York, right? So, but think about the hypocrisy of this. Frankie Pagliucci was terminated for allegedly having marijuana in his system. However, New York City, the NYPD in particular, first off, New York City as a whole hires people with marijuana in their system. Most New York City jobs doesn't even require a drug test, and you're never dole tested after. If it requires one drug test, you're never again tested for drugs. So, you're a New York City teacher. You could smoke pot at your own leisure. You could use drugs at your own leisure. You never have to worry about a drug test. Why? Because they have a very large union, right? That's why. So, but you're in the New York City Police Department, and you get terminated because you allegedly have marijuana in your system. But if you're a recruit and you have marijuana in your system, we'll hire you. And we'll give you chances to get that marijuana out of your system before you become off of probation. Where's the hypocrisy in that, Scott? We're hiring people with marijuana in their system, but we're firing people with marijuana in their system. I thought that this was a great thing that we did, according to Eric Adams. I thought it was great that every time I'm in New York City, all I smell is the stench of stale marijuana, like you're tossing some Skell's car who doesn't clean it and just has box outs in his car, and it stinks like marijuana all day. That's what New York City smells like. It smells like a car that hasn't been washed in months, and the person's been smoking pot in it day after day after day. It smells like a car you would toss, where there's clothes in there, there's all disgusting things around. That's what New York City smells like. And that's thanks to Eric Adams. But it's okay to hire cops with marijuana in their system. But it's not okay if you're an experienced cop and you allegedly have marijuana in your system. So we don't care that it's not our issue that the job's forcing you to put something in your body. It's not our issue that the job's forcing you to take a test that's not accurate. None of that's the NYPD's issue. None of that's the NYPD union's issue. They don't care. That has nothing to do with the health and welfare. So, again, another disgrace from the Detectives Endowment Association union. And to be fair, again, we invited John Shell on this podcast. He's too much of a coward because he can't have an actual conversation with people because he has way too many skeletons in his closet, and his balls are about this big, right? So he can't have that conversation. And we also invited Scott Munro on here to defend himself, and he's unwilling to. He's unwilling to sit before his own members and answer the questions that are in this chat. But let me answer the question that keeps coming in this chat. John, are you short? Because Shell keeps taking shots at you. I'm 5'9". Let's get that. If John Shell's 6'2", really doesn't matter. I'm not anyone for physical stature. I mean, but if we're gonna talk physicality, he should not comment on me physically at all because he's a train wreck. People are like, oh, you should fight him in a smoker. Fight him in a smoker? That's like telling me that I should beat up my 12-year-old nephew because he said something nasty to me. I should put him in a boxing ring and beat him up. I don't beat up old frail people that don't for no reason. He could say whatever he likes, but I'm 5'9".
Yeah. If the DEA isn't gonna if Scott isn't gonna speak up about things like Frankie's case, then you're just letting the problem fester for even longer. This problem should have been solved. We talked about this, before, but this problem should have been solved years ago, even decades ago. Okay, because it's been there since the inception of that methodology, and it wasn't. And now you have a potential class action suit on the way, and you have a continuing problem that's going to pop up again when other detectives, if other detectives get popped. Now, again, if you don't solve issues immediately, you create an even bigger problem long term. And if Scott isn't going to speak up about these issues, then what exactly does membership pay you for? Okay, if you're not going to do your job, are you still a union? Are you still a union? Okay, and also, Shell is 100% a coward. Okay, I'm going to say that. He's a coward because he's also afraid of tagging me on that. Okay. All right. No matter what I say about Shell, I've called him a fat slob numerous times on hand. Okay. And how he's an embarrassment in that uniform. Okay. Especially as the chief, as the highest ranking uniform member of the NYPD. There should be an expectation that you got to look like business in that uniform. Okay. Because if I look at Florida sheriffs, they all look like they're in business when they're in their uniform, okay? Because again, it's about setting an example. You can't go talk to rookies and tell them about staying in shape and staying fit for the job if you yourself don't look the part, okay? So I've said that numerous times, and yeah, he's afraid of tagging me, okay? So this guy's a coward, man, yeah?
Well, he's not only a coward, he's a total punk. But what you just articulated, what you explained is leadership 101. And the first and most important thing in leadership, and that is any rank or any position in any agency, not only police department, in any form of business, is setting the example. How do you expect other people to shine, be professional, or achieve in an organization if you can't do it yourself? How it's interesting when we would see John Shell talk about appearance and going back to the old ways, and yet his appearance is subpar. He's overweight, and it's fine. There are some people that are overweight, but still can have a good presence. There's a difference between being overweight. I know some people that I do jiu-jitsu with, and they're a little bit on the heavier side, but they're put together. They don't look sloppy, right? Because they actually exercise. Maybe just some people happen to be big boned. They're a lot of times they're from Eastern Europe descent, which they don't really get. A lot of people from Eastern Europe don't really get shredded. They're kind of like just big, but they're put together and they're still in shape. Now, John Shell is far different. In uniform, he's sloppy. He's out of shape. He's completely sloppy. And we understand as you get older, your body morphoses into a different shape and a different style. I don't expect someone that's in their late 50s to be completely shredded unless they're on all kinds of peptides and TRT. And if you are, God bless. I'm not against that either, right? These are enhancements and tools to help someone. If it's regulated by a doctor and you're taking care of yourself, you're not going to have any heart issues. But John Shell is just a complete mess. But yet we're going to talk about presence for our uniform officers, and his presence is subpar. Not only his physical presence, but what's even more important is he lacks emotional intelligence, and his personal and professional presence is unprofessional and is completely incompetent. And it's actually childlike and stupidity. But for the Finest Unfiltered, I love it. I'm entertained by him. It makes me laugh because, especially traveling throughout the entire country in an RV, and John Shell, it's not a trailer park. It's called an RV park if you get a chance. You must be completely tormented by your childhood. I don't know what happened if you have any trauma from a trailer park. But I've talked to people from the entire country, and they ask me what's going on in that city. And they know about the unprofessionalism from the upper echelon, the NYPD, and they ask about it all the time. So, John Shell, if you think you're just isolated to New York City, the entire country, and not only that, the entire world watches the NYPD. Movies and shows are demonstrative of the NYPD. The NYPD was the goat of policing, and the entire world has their eyes on the NYPD. It's such a big organization, but it's not the goat of policing anymore because of people like John Shell and because of the way the unions are right now. And this whole system that has been put out there of self-image and self-promotion and acting unprofessional, and there's no one actually in charge, and everyone running amok in this three-tiered system. It is a disaster, and it's not to go to policing anymore. Can it come back to it? I hope so. I hope so. But again, John Scola said it best. If you watch when he was on Sal Greco's show, he said it best. The NYPD does not fix the root of problems. It just pays out lawsuits to continue on with these amenities. So Frank Palagucci, this was a failed test. The NYPD should say, you know what? Let's start from scratch. Let's get a test that actually works, that's honorable, that doesn't get a metric or measure in comparison to something that's failure. But instead, I believe they don't want to fix it because they can use that and weaponize it against general population or maybe someone that they actually want to get rid of. And you could say, wow, would the NYPD do that? Yes. The Internal Affairs Bureau, the Selective Affairs Bureau, they would because they're henchmen for the upper echelon. Just ask Sal Greco. How was Sal Greco terminated? How did Internal Affairs have access to his phone records? He never committed crime. There's no allegations he committed crime, but he was attacked by the NYPD. The same NYPD that's being protected by some of these union members, by some people that are in retirement, that are still afraid to speak about the atrocities of the NYPD. You're protecting a system, and you have to ask yourself, Are you thinking clearly, or are you institutionalized?
Yeah, so I mean that's it. I mean, like the end of the day, right? Like end of the day, the relationship between the mayor is inappropriate. I don't care if the mayor is a Democrat. I don't care if the mayor is a socialist. I don't care if the mayor is a Republican. Your union should have a relationship with the mayor, but it should be a working relationship, not a personal relationship. The things that are done for you as a union president should be done to support your members, not just yourself and your own personal needs. Same's true for members of city council. Same's true for the state assembly, the Senate, and the governor's office. It shouldn't be done for personal gain. But yet what we see time and time again from unions is this is all done to build themselves up, build their families up. And that's all we're saying. We might be picking on Scott Munro today, but it's just a microcosm of everything that's been going on inside of city leadership, particularly inside of labor unions. The labor unions are part of the Tammany Hall scam. You know, that's what it is. I mean, it's clear as day. It's right out in the open. The DEA doesn't work for its members. The PBA doesn't work for its members. The LBA doesn't work for its members. The CEA doesn't work for its members. It works for itself first. It works for their own self-interest first. And then if there's some time left over, we'll deal with some of the stuff, but nothing where we're going to ruffle feathers with the politicians. No matter how wrong it is, no matter how hypocritical it is, we're not going to do it. Doesn't matter. Because, hey, he took care of us. Who's us? Who's us? And that's the real question. You know what I mean? And then, God forbid, you talk about it, you're attacking people. You're attacking people. It's like, no, everybody's talking about this, not just us. Like, everybody's talking about it. As a matter of fact, we weren't even the first people that started talking about it. A lot of people have been talking about it. So, but the thing is always to destroy, right? That's what it's done. You know, I find it funny. I already said every time I do a news hit, there was some fat, disgusting slob of a chief that would call up, you know, the station owners, the talent, their producers, saying that I'm a racist and all this other garbage about me, until the point that like Fox News and Newsmax stopped calling me. But then they started calling me again a few months ago, and I stopped doing them because I'm like, you know what? Screw them. I don't need them. They need me. They want my audience. I don't need their audience. Their audience doesn't watch podcasts. Their audience doesn't look at social media. What do I care about their audience? What do I care? Have this fat slob on, have him shovel garbage to you, and watch your ratings continue to drop. But then I hear from others that are completely uninvolved with the Finest Unfiltered. Completely uninvolved. Nothing to do with us at all whatsoever. Constantly doing news hits on Fox, on Newsmax, on all these other media stations. And maybe they liked the post, or maybe they commented on a post. And guess what happened? Newsmax and Fox and all these news outlets stopped calling them. I wonder why. Do you think maybe someone is so obsessed with the social media that they look to see who likes and who comments, and everything they do all day long is pick up the phone about who's interacting on the Finest Unfiltered? Just interacting. And it's like, it's disgraceful. So, you know, Scott, I know that your board members and you have been monitoring this podcast for a long time. And it's honestly, it's just as disgraceful as what your buddy Shell's been doing. It's absolutely disgraceful. He sits there, he trolls us, he makes inflammatory claims that we're against the rank and file when we're the only people that actually tell what's going on with the rank and file of the New York City Police Department. So it's absolutely disgraceful. You had the opportunity to come on. And I think it was complete cowardice on your part that you didn't, just like it was cowardice on John Shell's point to come on and talk about all of the nepotism and to say how great the crime work that he did along with New York City Mayor Eric Adams, and how everything was fine and dandy, and how me and Marlon should have just took the shot, kid. You know, so I think what to just like I don't think it's really something that no one knows. I think maybe the public as whole doesn't understand that the police unions don't matter and they actually don't represent their members. But the entire membership of the New York City Police Department understands that their unions do not represent them. They do not represent the members. They represent their own self-interest. And it's becoming more and more obvious. That's why you don't have any people. That's why your ranks are flooding. That's why they're all leaving. And, you know, you could put it on Mondani all you want, but it was your buddy Eric Adams that did it.
Yeah. And Eric Adams has decreased your membership, Scott. You know, he's literally decreased the power of the union. Okay. And you would have think you'd have been up in arms about that, but you haven't. Like, are you not thinking about your legacy here? I mean, we already see Chell and that whole crew has ruined their legacy. So what are you not thinking about yours at this point? You know, with all that's happened on this job so far. And again, I'm not, you know, it's not about me. There's very little you can do right now for me because you had the opportunity when you yourself said you could pick up the phone and at any moment's notice talk to Eric Adams. Okay. You had your chance. Okay. But it's not about me. It's not about any of us. It's about due process and fairness on the job. And it's ultimately going to be about your legacy because, you know, these young guys, you got to wonder how long they're going to put up with all of this before somebody challenges these guys at the unions.
We're getting close to 2 hours into this, and I think ultimately we gave a very fair assessment about the tiered system in the NYPD, the relationship with Scott Munro Sr. and Eric Adams, what's going on with the membership. You know, again, I don't have any hatred or any ill will to Scott. I've had great conversation with Scott. I enjoyed when he came on this podcast, but we have to be honest. If we just say, oh, everything's fine and dandy because we have great conversations or they're nice. I mean, Scott was never rude to me. I have nice conversations. And I don't care if he's friends with John Shell or anybody else. That's his business. But we have to be honest about what's going on here, about the professional relationship, what goes on as a union president, and what's necessary for the members. Now, Scott does say that he's advocating for the members, but there's a lot of self-interest here also. It's two-tiered. And I understand that, right? There's always going to be some form of nepotism. You know, if I'm in a position of power, am I going to put some friends or family members if they have the right tools and they deserve to be there? But this is out of control what's going on in this system right now when it comes to discipline, when it comes to amenities. It's the entire job. This job is no longer based on merit and having some of those opportunities. This job is completely based on that tiered system. We've moved away completely on just merit. And the discipline, the promotion, amenities, all this stuff ties in together. It surely does. And what I expect from a union when it comes to the mayor and the upper echelon is not having a relationship. And I'm bothered by that. That's a key word, that, you know, the relationship that Scott has with Eric Adams and having full access. What the union should have is a rapport. They should have a rapport with Eric Adams, a rapport with the administration, a rapport with the upper echelon, but not a relationship. Because you have to ask yourself, if they're having relationships, are these relationships personal? Are they for self-interest? And do they build a rapport that allows the union to be expressive? But if they're building relationships, well, then that really suffocates any potential for the union to be in opposition of certain things. But if there's relationships and they're having close relationships, well, that actually just completely sidesteps the union members. Because now the union members, if they're speaking out and there's things that are in opposition, it falls flat on its feet because the union heads are having relationships with the upper echelon and relationships with Eric Adams. It should be based on rapport, not relationships.
Absolutely. Let's just hear let's hear this video real quick.
About 150 people in counterterrorism after 9/11. There's 12 detectives in counterterrorism right now.
Are things falling through the cracks?
Not yet, but the question is, do you wait till it does?
Munro says current detective staffing sits just under 5,000, 2,000 fewer than before 9/11. And so far this year, 390 of them have already filed walking papers, on pace to shatter all of last year's 453.
About 150 people in counterterrorism.
So there was 150 people in counterterrorism, 150 detectives solely. Under Eric Adams now, there's only 12. Nothing's falling through the cracks. I mean, it's impossible. It's impossible. And that's, look, that was way before any of you ever knew Zohran Mamdani's name. This is Eric Adams' failure, and we doubled down on it and continue to endorse him and continue to praise him and have detectives sing to him and hand him an achievement award. Like, come on. Disgusting, man. Absolutely disgusting. And Pat Donahue says, the true issue is how current active members of the DEA were prohibited from running for board officer positions. Yeah, I think, it's not just in the DEA, though, Pat. Like, we literally documented that firsthand on how they shut people down from even the ability to run to the PBA board and how they manipulated the election. And that's happening in all the boards. If anybody comes up that you believe is a viable candidate or a threat to you as the president or a threat to your board officers, someone who's well liked in the NYPD, you're going to try to do everything you can, including manipulating the votes to ensure that that person never even becomes a delegate. And I think that's clear as day with all of the unions. And that's why I continuously say I don't think any active guys should run any NYPD unit. It should be all retired guys. I think that if you're active, you should have to step down. You shouldn't collect a double salary. You should just do your job, because it's clear as day. There's too much conflict of interest to me. There's too much stuff that's conflicting there, and it shouldn't, it just shouldn't be done. It shouldn't be done. That is a conflict of interest. You're on the job, you're assigned here, but you're under the control of this boss and that boss. You're worried about your appearances. You shouldn't have the ability. You shouldn't have the ability to still be on the job. Union should be a completely separate job. You should no longer be an active uniform member of service. You shouldn't be in the uniform members pension system either. Same way, like what we were talking about. Like there's so much graft and grift going on. You're a politician. When you are no longer assigned to being a cop, that's it. You're a politician now. That's what it is. You're a politician. You should be treated as a politician. You should be treated as a civilian member of that union. You should no longer be a uniform member. And you should be held accountable. And there should be the ability for not only members to vote you in and out, and for anybody in that union to become the president, for anyone that was in that union to become the president, but also for your membership to hold you accountable, that there's recall options as well. Like, all right, we elected Marlon to the DEA president, and now all he's doing is shit that he's doing for his own personal gain. We don't want him to be the president anymore. We want to have a vote, and have that system be fair, but we're a long time from that. So I don't know. I got nothing else on this. I don't know. I just think we nailed it. I don't really think there's too much of an argument here. I really don't. I don't see the argument. I don't see what Scott Munro or what any of these unions have done for the rank and file membership. I just don't. And it clear as day. We could go back to 2020. We could go back to the Floyd riots. We could go back to 2018 when all this bullshit legislation was coming in. We could go back to 2013 when this whole diversity, equity, inclusion movement was started in the New York City Police Department. We could move over to the vaccine mandate. We could come over to today. We could talk about the corruption. None of it matters. The unions have been absolutely nowhere. They've been silent. They've been pretending they don't see any of it. They've been directly involved in the grift and the graft.
Yeah. I don't think there's much to be said, but I'm gonna add just one thing, that I also don't think having all these unions, benefits cops. There shouldn't be a detectives union and a PBA. Okay, and especially at this point where the detectives union is like 3,000 members, I would rather be represented by the PBA right now, because at least they have the numbers. The DEA is kind of insignificant right now, So again, but I'm sure again it's all deliberate divide and conquer on the part of the city. So
great comment over here, friends and listeners. Thank you so much for the engagement as always. A lot of these comments are fantastic. YouTube's just totally destroyed these names.
Wait, go back. We lost you. What'd you say?
Oh, okay. Going to a comment here from D2ORD1. They're totally, these names are all distorted from YouTube, but great comment. Says every union board member has over 20 years on the job. Some haven't handled a case in years. That's what I've been talking about for quite often. I've been saying that for over 3 years, that most of the union members, especially the board members and the trustees, they're far removed from the everyday police officer, especially a young police officer right now. If you have 2 years on the job, these union board members cannot relate to you. If you're a detective in the squad right now, they cannot relate to you. One, the ECMS, which is Enterprise Case Management System, is far different than it was years ago. It's a far different system if you're doing casework as a detective. And it's a lot more casework than it was before. Not taken away from the detectives, but the amount, and especially right now, and my hat goes off to the detectives, but you're in a detective squad, and these detectives, the amount of video they have to watch when it comes to casework from point to point when there's a crime is extensive. It's exhausting. So my hat's off to any detective that has to watch videos. God bless you. It's a lot of work. It's a daunting task. Yeah. And if you're a police officer right now, and you're wearing a body camera, a body-worn camera, these union members, they cannot relate to you because they never worn or had to don a body-worn camera. They don't even carry business cards. They never had to give out business cards, which is not even rule, it's law. They never had to deal with a CCRB that has so much power right now with racial bias and the disdain that the CCRB has. The tools that you have on your belt, they didn't even wear, such as a taser. So how could a union member now relate? You would think that someone would, we quite often talk about the NYPD predominantly, I think it's close to 50% that has less than 5 years on the job, and there's no one to pass the torch. And if the union really cared, you would say these men and women in the union that have over 20 years on the job would don a uniform sometimes to help out and pass the torch on to these young police officers, but they can't because they're far removed and they don't know what it is to walk in the boots of an everyday police officer, a police officer today. So that's why it's important that, yes, there should, and John's right, there should be some type of vote to maybe get someone out, whether they're inadequate, incompetent, or they just can't relate. So it's time to get some young blood in there that can actually relate to a young police officer. Hey, you wearing a body-worn camera? I'm getting one. And ironically, the union fought to get a percentage increase in raise in salary for the body-worn camera that they never have to wear. So at some point, they should have to wear it, and it would be less political and more about police work. And I do believe that the union would have a different appearance, a different presence if they had more appearances out in the street and would be less political. But because they never wear the uniform and actually do police work, let's be honest, when they say, we're cops and we're fighting for other cops, you're not a cop anymore. You're not doing police work. You're not having to wear that uniform. Your role is important if it's actually effected properly, but in the union, you're playing politics. So with that being said, it's Wednesday. I want to thank everyone as always. Don't forget, make sure you check out tonight the Executive Perspective. If you ask John the time, you might get a different time. It's 17:05. All right. And for those of you that don't know military time, that's 5:05. Tomorrow, Sal Greco will be on. Sal Greco will actually be coming on at 2:05, which is 14:05 Eastern time. There is a change of time for tomorrow's show. Make sure you stay tuned with that. And of course, Friday we'll be back for the roundtable. I love the engagement as always. And John Shell, thank you so much. You are our #1 fan, brother. Maybe tied with Juju, but we appreciate it. We love you.
Yeah. So that's it, fellas. And just real quick on the body camera thing, Eric, I was just thinking about what you said. 2017, the program goes like really full-fledged across. It was started earlier, but 2017, it really is like goes across the whole department. If you look at the CEA, the LBA, the SBA, the PBA, the DEA, none of them have wore body cameras. Not one of them. You know what I mean? And none of them have been subject to the CCRB board either. So I think that's the other thing. And when you look at what's been going on with the legislation at the city council level and the CCRB, they're completely absent. They haven't been anywhere. They don't go to the city council hearings. They don't go to the CCRB meetings. They're not on top of it. They're not even advocating against it. Really crazy to me. And then when you look at the donations and you look at which politicians they're donating to, defund the police advocates, people that are going for anti-police legislation. And it's almost never the person that they should be getting the money or the person that actually supports the police. Truly pathetic. Let's get into these super chats. So we got, it's told to you so back when, says twice, 6'2". I didn't know they piled shit that high. So he says he or she says it twice, right? And it's funny because Shell actually, that thing I read out, he tweeted it 3 times already. So I mean, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if he's all right or not, but I don't know if he's having Tourette's. But there you go, Frankie Pagliucci. You know, we read that out where he says that he reached out to Scott more than 10 times about the breach of contract. Nothing to say about it. Same thing with Marlon's case. Same thing with Sal's case when it came to the PBA. Nobody cares. Same thing with Eric's case. Same things with my case when it comes to the LBA. Nobody cares because you're not in with the in crowd. Unless you're in with the in crowd, nobody cares. It's like, you'll be population. Right, yeah, you'll be all right, kid. Don't worry about it. You seem like a smart guy. So let's see. It's told you so back when John Shell is Rocky and Rocky Balboa telling his war stories with the Apollo at the restaurant with customers not wanting to hear it anymore. I disagree, man. I don't think Rocky was a legend, bro. He might have been in his glory days. John Shell was never a legend. You know, he's got no glory days, bro.
Rocky was in better shape too.
Yeah, sorry.
He's a legend in his own mind, you know?
Yeah, he's got no glory days. Read, if you guys get a chance, read Dana Rachlin's lawsuit against the NYPD. Pretty interesting comments, what she had to say about John Shell. So if that's what he wants to hang his hat on, I mean, I don't know. But those don't seem like glory days for me. Mon Samurai says, morning, gents. Coffee, and donuts on me. Needed extra coffee this AM. Mon Samurai, thank you, sir. We appreciate you as always. It's told to you back when. Puff Daddy is okay. Wu-Tang is for the kids. I don't know, bro. A lot of shady stuff going on with 50 Cent and Puff Daddy. You know, I saw a photo of both Puff Daddy and 50 in the hot tub. You know, I don't know. Not looking good, my friends. Not looking good. You know, not looking good. I'm glad I'm not in the rap game. You know, it seems just like in the NYPD. Shell has no neck. It's told to you. So back when. Feds need to investigate the fake vaccine cards. So again, like I think that the people with the fake vaccine cards, I think they were put in a really bad situation. I think they ultimately bended their integrity, but I don't think they're to blame. And I don't think that's where the investigation lies. I think the investigation lies into how the New York City handled this. And I think instead of harming more working class people that had their back against a wall, I think that they should just make it right for the working class people who they harmed during that illegal mandate. You know, I don't really think it needs to go into the fake vaccine cards. I think it just needs to be made right for the people that were screwed. You know, the people that actually had integrity. You know, and Frankie Pagliucci says, "Bingo, spot on, Marlon." That was earlier in the podcast. I think we got some more. BKNYC gave $1. Appreciate you, brother. Pat Donahue says, cigar and protein power for the listeners. May today's podcasters encourage stage true transparency and open dialogue. Rip retired police officer John Hanson. So today's the funeral for retired police officer John Hanson. He passed away due to 9/11 cancer. So that's a line of duty death. Post 9/11 duty death. His brother was also his brother was also killed in the line of duty during a training exercise. So yeah, absolutely. You know, shout out to them. May rest in peace. Marlon, you got anything, brother?
No, but I noticed that the NYPD is streaming the recruit swearing in right now, and maybe it's just me, but since when do they broadcast that? You know, I mean, good on the recruits, but I mean, you're just at the you're not even on step 1 yet, you know. But I just find it interesting that they're doing that now. But also, we're not going to talk about it today. But there's a story about that detective in Mount Vernon. I find that very interesting. What's going on in that who they're trying to terminate right now. Other than that, I think we had a good discussion earlier, and I think thank you guys for joining us, and thank you to our chat regulars. It was a pretty great discussion. I saw the chat flying by very quickly, and yeah, that's pretty much it from me. Have a great day,
I think
guys.
this was. I want to wrap this up and just say I think this was an extremely fair assessment. I think this was an honest assessment, and people don't want to hear honesty and truth. And it's not personal; it comes from somewhere professional, and it's what these are conversations that need to have happen on an often basis to actually make some real change. And I tell you right now, I won't rest until there's some real change with the Civilian Complaint Review Board, the disciplinary matrix, this tiered system for promotions, and when it comes to discipline. I mean, we have to get somewhere with some equitable distribution, or at least get a better appearance than we are right now. It's not going to happen overnight, but we have to keep our feet to the fire. And I want to thank our friends and listeners. Thank you so much. And please, I'm going to ask you right now, support Marlon. Support Marlon in this fight, because Marlon should be a first-grade detective in the NYPD. He should not be terminated. Why other people have the same amenities, are getting promoted within the police department. I'm not saying that people that aren't deserving of it. But if you're saying that Scott Munro is deserving of second-grade promotion, then sure as hell, Marlon deserves better. Marlon is the face of many others. He deserves better, and you deserve better. And if you're in the police department right now and you just turn your head saying, oh, well, what am I going to do? Well, you know what? You could say that, but one day they may come for you. One day you may be Marlon, you may be John, you may be Eric, you may be Sal. And if you keep turning your head away, that day may come too far. Unfortunately, it may come far more sooner than you expect. And they may come for you. They came for Frankie Palagucci. They came for Sal. They came for Marlon. They came for myself. They came for John. And you know what? Sometimes you're up. So we have to fight better for each other. So please, I want to support Marlon. Marlon, this is completely undeserved. You hit the lottery in reverse, and it shouldn't happen to anyone. Absolutely zero due process. I mean, think about that. Marlon cannot even tell you the date he's terminated or why he's terminated. That is quite interesting. Think about that. If Marlon was to go to a job interview and they were to ask him when he's terminated, he doesn't even know and why he's terminated. So think about these things. Marlon, I support you, brother, as always. Thank you, everyone. The Finest Unfiltered.
Yeah. One quick thing. I appreciate your kind words, Eric, but guys, it ain't about me. Okay, it ain't. That whole mandate thing was just it was just the first stage of what was going to come in the rest of the administration, and it's not about me. It's about like the unfairness of the entire job. And sure, they hurt my career. I mean, my career is over. They hurt John's career, but the problem is that we're not there. You guys are still there, and you guys are suffering. And in a lot of ways, you guys are suffering even worse than us, because again, you took it to keep your job, and look what's happening to you. The city is now trying to get rid of your health care. Okay, so again, Eric Adams loves to say that you guys were loyal, and he loves loyalty. You guys were being loyal by taking it, but what do you get for your loyalty? Okay, what do you get now? You get potentially adverse consequences, and now they're trying to get rid of your health care. And the fact that still happened and we haven't come to our Jesus moment yet means that any one of you could be next to lose your job without due process. So again, I appreciate Eric's kind words, but it's just not about me. It's about the entire job, and it's about the entire the way the job is structured right now. It's not fair, and it needs to change.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, brother. Yeah. So look, there's a lot of stuff that we didn't go over today. You see the incompetence nationwide that's going on in police departments, in our top law enforcement agency, the FBI. It's just blatant sheer incompetence, and it's everywhere. And it's because the people that are in leadership did not earn it. That is simple. They just did not earn it. You're putting people in leadership experience, in leadership roles in law enforcement, and it's having dire consequences across this nation and even across the world. What happened in Bondi Beach was a disgrace. What happened in Brown University and the ensuing days, and even today, what's happening, it's disgraceful. It's to watch the FBI like look for evidence by kicking the snow with their feet. I mean, it's disgraceful. And you see like they're in the front page of the paper. Kash Patel's on a podcast with an embroidery. It's like, what are we doing here? It looks terrible. So much to talk about we didn't get to. I'm going to be out on Friday. I forgot to realize I'm trying to make Thirsty Thursdays to Joyce's. We'll see if I could be there, but I'm going to be in New York City for the next couple of weeks. So, I'm I'm going to be out on Friday, but there's a lot of things that need to be talked about. I know Ron and Rob are going to talk about Bondi Beach and Brown University and a couple other things tonight. I believe they're going to be joined by Chief Marino as well. So that should be an interesting show. Definitely check that out. But I am hearing, and I heard through Kyle Seraphin last night, I caught a little clip of him. He was on Alex Jones's show. Kyle was recently on Sal's podcast. He said that Dan Bongino's office is empty. His chief of staff has left, and he believes that Dan Bongino is no longer part of the FBI, and they just haven't officially announced it yet. He believes he may be on terminal, and he believes within the next 48 hours you may hear that Dan Bongino is no longer a member of the FBI, and he thinks that Kash Patel's on his way out shortly after the new year. So let's see how that turns out. So check all that stuff out. Check out tonight, and yeah, I'll leave you with 2 videos that we got. Anything else before we run, fellas?
Nope.
Sounds good to me. Everyone enjoy Hump Day. Enjoy the rest of the week.
Yeah.
Check out the Executive Perspective tonight. We'll see you soon.
Yep. Happy Wednesday, people.
Introduce my colleague and friend, Kaz Daughtry, the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety.
Thank you, DM. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an honor to add a token to this time capsule on behalf of the public safety team that never stops getting stuff done for New Yorkers. Over the last few years, my office took on some of the toughest public safety challenges in this city, and we did it with focus, coordination, and compassion. But the item I'm placing in the time capsule today is a piece of one of our drones. It represents something even larger than any single initiative. This administration made a deliberate choice to embrace new technology, not shy away from it. That's why my office launched the Emerging Technology Committee to evaluate cutting-edge tools across all of the public safety agencies and determine if the ones that are working well can be adopted by the other teams. And that's why Mayor Adams created the Drone Operations Committee to expand the safe, responsible use of drones citywide. Drones have already helped us respond faster and better protect people in ways that simply wasn't possible a few years ago. Though our Drone as a First Responder program, drones can reach an incident in about 2.5 minutes, providing critical live view of the scene before officers and first responders even arrive. Drones have also been used to help save the lives of more than 200 kids who were caught subway surfing, some as young as 11 years old. And on our beaches this past summer, drones helped save more than 40 swimmers and provided early warning to beachgoers and spotted over 20 shark sightings, keeping beachgoers safe and also keeping first responders safe as well. This is a small piece of hardware right here. I was debating between this or airtight when somebody digs this box a little while. But this represents something more larger. This is a symbol of our commitment to innovation, to problem solving, to use every tool at our disposal, and to never being afraid to try something new if it's going to work to keep New Yorkers safe. We are here today to reflect on the incredible things that we have accomplished under Mayor Eric Adams' leadership for these past 4 years. But this time capsule is also about looking to the future. And it's a path and a path forward for new technology, new ideas, and a public safety system that is built not just for today's challenges, but for tomorrow's as well. Thankfully, we had a mayor who recognized that this technology is the future of public safety, and I have no doubt that the work we started here will keep New Yorkers safe for generations to come. Thank you. And now I would like to bring up DM Suzanne.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?